Hello, happy to get everything started here, letting our attendees join. All right. Well, thank you everybody for taking time out of your evening to join us. We will begin. It's going to be an interesting webinar. We've done this locally and happy to bring it online. All different types of college essays. My name is Jonathan Ginsberg, president of Beyond Education Consulting, and happy to jump right in. Okay, we have a few more people joining us. Great. And I just wanted to be clear, if you do have questions, feel free to ask them, put them in the chat. We will be getting to questions at the end. And of course, we'll have more time for discussion. But okay, we can jump right into it. So yeah, before we begin talking about essays, just wanted to briefly introduce a little bit about how we support students in general. So here at Beak, we do everything from tutoring, test prep, college consulting, internship placement. The idea being that college is a developmental stage for students' life in the future. So it's our mission to help students better understand themselves, where their future may lead, and then we can help to provide better education planning. So that happens through our mentorship, 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, through the actual application consulting itself, through academic support, tutoring, test prep, and of course, certain internships and professor research opportunities that we cultivate through our own network for students. And of course, we're very proud of where our students go. We have students at pretty much every single top university in America, with a large proportion in top 20, top 50 schools, all within top 100. But let's jump into the main content of our webinar today. So what are colleges looking for? Before we can talk about essays, we have to acknowledge that essays are part of a larger application package. So what are colleges looking for? Well, if you ask Tim Ravey, who is the former assistant director of admissions at Berkeley, which we did, we were expecting a very general answer, but he said, we're looking for three things. And these have resonated with us. They've resonated with other colleges. It's a really nice way to break down roughly what colleges are looking for. One is smart. So you must have good enough grades, good enough scores to be considered for the school. So that maybe wipes out 20% of the students who do not meet their academic requirement, but 80% of them, they will read entirely. So they'll read the full application from the 80% of students. Next, well, if you're so smart, are you passionate? Are you doing things that are related to what you say you like? Are you involved in your community? How are you spending your time essentially? And so that can be proven through extracurriculars, through your essays, and that might be another 40%. But how do we get to that roughly final 10% of what a lot of the top schools are accepting for students, around 10% of the total students? Well, now we're looking into if you're so smart, if you're so passionate, are you nice? Are you improving the world around you? Are you making the community better for others? If we accept you, and you come to our campus for 4 years, will you just be getting A's and not really paying attention to community? Will you even be hurting others, or will you actually be making our home, our campus, a better place? And of course, contributing in the future to the world. So that is a very important part, and that's when it kind of all boils down to this term called likability. There was a big lawsuit against Harvard and discrimination, and Harvard used the term likability to explain how they select students in times when it didn't seem so logical. And although it was highly scrutinized, that term, there are elements of logic, or at least there's a system by which you can try to show your likability. So we have to just keep this in mind as we move into what makes a good essay, what and how that combines well into a successful application. So if we know that essays are important and activities are the other component, just wanted to first just do a quick review. What is an activity? We get asked this a lot. Activity can be anything you spend time on. If you have a younger brother and you drive him to school, that is a family responsibility. That is an activity. If you work, that's an activity. You're doing volunteer work, you're in clubs, you do sports. They're all different ways that you actively spend your time. Now, are they all of equal value? No. Do they all influence colleges the same? No, but they are all activities. So once again, they're explorations of interest, they're exhibitions of talents. There's a window to your life. How do you actually spend your time? How do you operate? How is the world around you? And lastly, they're opportunities for learning and impact. So when we write essays, which we'll get into, where do we derive the content from? Well, we're deriving it from your life, which means what you are doing, which means your activities. So typically, the commonality between strong activities is that you're making great impact. Somehow you're improving you're solving some problem, you're improving the lives of others around you, and that is typically what's considered most valuable. So whether that's on a science angle or from a more community focused angle, somehow you're solving problems for those around you and or improving the lives of others. So this just once again gives context for how we will get to understand how to write a good college essay. So college essays, what are the types? We'll do a quick breakdown here. So pretty much all of our students will be doing two main application systems, up to three application systems or more. But Common Application is the main one. Almost all schools use Common Application, except University of California and CSUs, UC, CSUs. They have their own systems. MIT has their own. They like to be special. Georgetown still has their own, although next year, 2026, they will join Common App. But essentially, you'll be doing Common App, which has one essay, one main essay, 650 word limit, and you have 6 prompts. We will get into what those prompts are, but they're very broad. So pretty much you can write about anything. And once again, they're a way of getting to know you, right? Your background or what's relevant to you, what you deem valuable to communicate, and it's communication of your values. So this idea being, if you can write about anything to express yourself, then what you choose to write about in many ways is an implicit, indirect way of saying, I care about these things, which means these are my values. So we'll get to that later when we talk about how to write a good essay and a comparison between a less good essay and a more good essay. But once again, this is all laying the foundation for understanding how we approach essays. Separately, each school typically has their own essay, sometimes multiple essays, sometimes 4, 5, 6 of their own essays. And these range in topic, everything from why our school or major, how have you impacted your community or solved a problem, favorite activity, academic interest. There's quirky topics that don't really fall into a category, and sometimes there's much shorter answers. Now, once again, when you are submitting an application, you have different components, your grades, your activities, your essays, letters of recommendation. Many parts of the application will blend together. Your grades will blend together with other students of good scores. Your activities will even start to blend together. It's hard to understand this activity versus that activity, the very short descriptions. But through the essays, you can truly be remembered. You can establish an emotional connection with the reader and be remembered in a positive way. It's pretty much the only time you get to make that emotional connection and therefore truly be accepted by the admissions officer. But before we jump in, more to that point, there is a great Maya Angelou quote. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So it's our mission through these essays. We have certain goals for how we want the reader to feel and how we want them to think about us. And if we do that appropriately, if we do that effectively, then we have increased our chances of getting in significantly. So all of our students now are going through Common App. A lot of our students have drafts, and it's great, and we're working through finalizing them. But what is the Common App? What are the prompts? There's all these potential prompts, and if you read through them, even if you just read through a couple of them, you'll start to realize anything can be a Common App essay. Everything from talking about a background story to saying a time you overcame an obstacle, a time you were challenged or questioned a belief or idea. So this is the only time when we first consider what is the best story to tell about the student, and knowing that after we write the essay, it will align with one of these prompts. Every other time we read the prompt first, we have to be very specific to answer the prompt. Common App personal statement is the one time where we know that as long as we write a good story, the best story we want to tell, it will fit with one of these prompts. So we reverse engineer it. So I will jump into an example of a student we had last year. Very interesting example. So we had a student who has 2 essays It's very rare our students have two personal statements. Why would they have two personal statements? We just work with them. They should have one. This student worked with a couple of companies before us. And in doing so, the family came to us and said, we're not really happy with the essay. Do you think you can help to edit it? And we read through the essay and we agreed we thought it could be improved. Now, this student had written 20 pages before getting to a personal statement. Personal statement's one page. So he had written 20 pages to try to get to a draft. So I worked with two other companies that went back and forth so many times, and they were still not happy. We tried to edit it. So we said, okay, let's do our best, right? You've written so much, let's try to help. And they came back to us again. They said, still not really happy with it. And we read it again, and we said, I think you're right. It's still not good enough. But in reading it again, we also realized that the core message being being communicated is not particularly strong. For a regular school essay, maybe it's fine, but for a college essay, it didn't really show much growth about the student. It didn't really show how they developed over time. Nothing that we couldn't already know from the activities or their general background. So we said, no matter how we edit this essay, it will never become a good college essay. Are you willing to start from scratch? And they said, yes, we're willing to start from scratch. So we did that and we totally reframed the conversation. And anyway, Eli's very open about his application. He's very happy to share it. But we said, from ninth grade to now, where do you think the great change has come? What have you faced? How have you somehow become more mature, more prepared for your future, more prepared for college? He said, well, going to ninth grade, I guess I always felt I was kind of right, or most things went my way. But in high school, sometimes I would plan to do something or intend to do something, and it wouldn't go my way. And then I had to really get out of my own perspective and try to understand the needs of other people better. And we said, okay, well, maybe this is something, a side of you we wouldn't know. And this would show interesting maturity, interesting self-reflection, and lead to perhaps a more successful future. So we worked off of this, but let's just compare the two essays. And I should note that it is true. Eli eventually got into Yale and U Chicago and all these top schools, Columbia. And we say this once again, not so much for the schools, but just this idea that this is a student who is very motivated, very smart, but if you are going down the wrong path, no amount of effort will put you on the right path. So you just keep going down that path. Of course, you're not going to come out with a good result. So the way we like to handle things is really accepting lots of information about the student. We do this large essay brainstorm process. We start to identify key qualities about the student. What are the stories that will be the vehicles to show those qualities? And that way we don't show up 2 months later saying we need to restart everything because we have a bad story. So we have to really consider what are our narratives. But let's take a look at what Eli first wrote. So we have the before and after. So starting with the first page. My heart palpitated as the crowd roared, "We want Rosa! We want Rosa!" The noise ascended into a deafening cacophony as the frenzied audience awaited the appearance of Representative Rosa DeLauro on election night 2022. I had spent the past fall volunteering for the Congresswoman's re-election campaign. On election night, I was in the war room with her campaign team. "We want Rosa! We want Rosa!" The boisterous crowd grew impatient as news outlets broadcast the latest returns from across the district. When would the results be sufficient for her to declare victory and appear on stage? I was beginning to wonder about this question myself when she entered the room. A swirl of purple and pink descended from her dyed hair in loud scarf to her long, intricately woven dress of blue and yellows. Rosa was here. Her husband, Stan Greenberg, Bill Clinton's former pollster, asked out loud whether she was up by enough points to declare victory on stage. This was my chance. I took a deep breath, relaxed, and let my mind run free. The data we had received from town and city election officials had been insufficient to calculate the percentage differential between Rosa and her primary competitor. Suddenly it hit me. There was an easier way to solve this puzzle and get the campaign the necessary information. First, I determined what percent of the vote Rosa had by using her votes in the total vote count. Then I extrapolated her opponent's percentage of the vote, and finally I subtracted the two values. 16, I blurted out. I had found my number. As I stood there amidst the desperate fervor of taps on keyboards, Rosa's chief statistician looked at me with concern, but I knew that my math was right. Eventually, he confirmed that Rosa was up by 15.9 points, and Rosa left the war room to declare her election victory. What struck me in that moment was not just the euphoria of contributing to a winning team, but also more profoundly the revelation that I could use math in particular, and STEM in general, to solve real-world problems. Ever since, I have found new opportunities to apply math and science to my life in varied yet impactful ways. For example, I now apply physics insights whenever I step onto the basketball court. When I shoot the ball, I anticipate what degree of rotation my shot needs so that the Magnus force can overpower the air drag. Every layup includes an instantaneous calculation of the degree of spin my ball needs when it impacts the backboard to maximize its chance of bouncing into the net. I keep searching for ways to use my new superpower of applicability. This past summer, I wanted to expand my exposure to using STEM to tackle a real world problem. So I chose a material science lab at Yale, where I was able to use newly designed materials like bulk metallic glasses to provide greater structural integrity to buildings. It was a project at the intersection of chemistry and physics, and I loved every minute of it. I'm still working with the group as the research has expanded to investigate ways to use mushrooms and coconut hair as renewable and climate-friendly construction alternatives to concrete or wood. My experiences applying STEM disciplines to real-world problems over the past year have profoundly impacted my life and opened up a new and exciting path I am eager to pursue. I can't wait to see how I will use my new superpower of applicability in college and beyond. So feel free, anybody watching, to write in what you think this essay is trying to achieve. What is the core message being conveyed, and do we like it or not? If anyone wants to give their personal feedback, feel free to write it down. So when we look at this, we could say most simply, the message is I use STEM in real life to solve problems. Now, I guess the answer would be most people do. He used math, some basic algebra, with in the campaign, and then he tried to force a couple of examples, saying he uses physics when playing basketball, and nobody really uses physics when playing basketball, and it just seems a little bit, how would you say, a little artificial, right? It felt a little bit like someone's idea of what a good college essay should look like, put in some fancy examples, try to sound smart, and that's when we realized the real value being communicated here. If we say, "Oh, I use STEM in my life, I solve problems," the real value being communicated is, "I'm smart. Let me show you I'm smart. One, two, three," which we don't need in a personal statement. We know these activities already. We don't know why he does these things, what really drives him. We just know that he seems to be decent at math and he probably likes science and he believes that being smart is sort of the number one thing in his life. So we felt it was pretty hollow. And that's why we realized we could not edit it to become good. So we totally abandoned it and we focused on a new angle. So we'll look at the after now. What if I told you that the golden rule was wrong? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you is a maxim I had constantly heard while growing up. As a child, it made intuitive sense to me. Whatever made me happy would probably ought to also make others happy, no? So I let this golden rule of ethical reciprocity guide my interactions and relationships with others, helping my friends when they had trouble with their homework or sharing snacks with teammates on rides to soccer games, as that is what I would have wanted. Made me feel good and deepen my connections with others. Applying the golden rule was a healthy way to expand my consciousness beyond the self-absorption that so often permeated my adolescence. More recently, though, I have experienced events that led me to question its universality. I first realized the golden rule's limitations while coordinating a community service event this past year. St. Luke's, a local church, previously approached my school's community service board seeking help with a holiday party they hosted. I offered to co-direct this project to make the party a hit. Approximately 40 families attended, and we all enjoyed a fantastic night full of smiling kids. This past year, the church again approached us, and I immediately signed up to lead the project. I decided we needed to go bigger, more presents, better activities, and elaborate decorations. My imagination soared to new heights as our team created an unforgettable night. We sent out advertisements to the church community detailing the exhilarating plans, but to my shock and dismay, only 4 families showed up. My unbridled enthusiasm had led me to fly too close to the sun, and like Icarus, the party crashed and burned. After some painful reflection, I realized what had gone wrong. We'd made the party exciting for us, but failed to consider what the children might find fun. They wanted to sit on Santa's lap, yet we created complicated snowflake cutting stations. They wanted to send wish lists to the North Pole, but we brought them high-tech gadgets for presents. Though we weren't trying to be selfish, we blew it when it came to listening to the kids' hopes and dreams. I've also seen how the golden rule can equally backfire when it comes to relationships. I immediately enjoy being the group therapist among my peers. I love grappling with their problems and strategizing effective solutions. Earlier this year, however, an encounter exposed me to the shortcomings of this approach. A friend of mine was worried about an upcoming exam. Sensing an opportunity to offer my sage guidance, I jumped right into action. I gave him advice on getting an extension and offered to tutor him on the material. Instead of thanking me, he became upset and stormed off. I stood there shocked and confused. Later, he explained that what he had needed was someone to listen to his fears and frustrations, not to try to fix anything. He wanted to feel heard and supported in his moment of stress. What would have helped me most, responding with practical solutions, was completely different from what my friend saw from his friend. No, I'm not saying to totally trash the golden rule, but I now also appreciate that I undermine the compassion driving my concern for others if I fail to engage them based on their needs and aspirations. I want to care for and empathize with others in a way that affirms their human dignity. Moving forward, I know approaching people, issues, and even technology with perspective and empathy will only grow more important. Instead of clinging to the golden rule within a me-centric world, I aspire to do unto others as they would want done for themselves. I'll let others come up with a catchy name for it, but until then, let's call it being human. So, in this second essay, he confronts his own selfishness, even if it's unintentional, hubristic nature, and how did he really internalize some lessons throughout high school to try to become better for himself, for his friends, for others, acknowledging mistakes, acknowledging difficulties, while ultimately appearing very well thought and contemplative, and inevitably showing great maturity through the high school process. So this idea being that we have one student, same background with two extremely different stories focused on extremely different values. And although we can say college admissions is unfair and it's very hard and it's sort of seems mysterious, it's not illogical and it's not unfair, at least in an illogical way. Sorry, like don't move, then the lights turn off. So basically, we would say if we show this to five people, 5 out of 5 will likely pick the second essay over the first essay. So once again, college admissions has a lot of mystery surrounding it, but in reality, there is fairly logical calculation of who is good and what's good. So just wanted to share that. With respect to, in general, how we view storytelling, before I jump into other essays, I think it's important. One is we like to compare college essays, especially personal statements, to a movie, a screenplay. This idea that you're telling a complex story. A movie may, cover years of time, but there's only 90 minutes long. Same thing with a college essay. We have 650 words here, but we're covering years of time. So although you're telling a complex story in a tight format, it doesn't feel rushed, it doesn't feel unnatural, but it's highly coordinated. Also, like a movie, you're following a hero throughout. You need to like this person. They do good things, bad things. Somehow you want to see how they're doing. You care about them. Then, of course, there's growth. If the hero at the beginning of the story was the same as the end, it's probably a very boring movie, a very bad movie. Same idea that we need to see growth through the personal statement. But that sort of defines what a story is. But what makes it good? This is when we compare the personal statement, the essay, to a burger. This idea that all burgers have a bun, they have cheese, they have meat, they have the same components, but why are some delicious and juicy and I want more of it, and then some are bland and terrible and I don't even want to try them? So that comes a lot in terms of the emotional range. So the highs are high, the lows are low. We really feel invested, and also the authenticity of it. So we have highs and lows emotions, but we also believe in the hero himself or herself. So those are important things to keep in mind that sort of do guide the writing process. But let's get back to the PowerPoint. So another very popular essay you're almost certainly going to have to write is why our school? So almost every single school will ask you why our school, why our major, and the idea being, in terms of general rules, the more personal, the better. They want to make sure that this is you saying why it fits you, not a general answer for why this school should somehow be connected to your goals, your interests. Of course, do your research very deeply. In some ways, they're also evaluating your true interest to go to the school. Did you really actually look at us? Did you really choose us individually, or you just kind of know our name? So the goal, prove you truly know the school and you actually want to go to this school. But I'm going to show you 2 examples of successful essays for Y school. So this was a student who got into both schools, but with different styles. So this student went to, well, she's at Johns Hopkins or will be at Johns Hopkins very soon. but she did also apply to USC. So Johns Hopkins has a Y school essay, but their specific prompt is how has your life experience contributed to your personal story, your characters, values, perspectives, or skills, and what do you want to pursue at Hopkins? So this is a little bit more about the background plus Hopkins. It's not, purely about Hopkins. Oh, and I do see a hand up. Feel free to write in the chat or write in the Q&A section if you wanted to say anything. But let's read through. And then, yeah, then we have another one as well that we'll get to for USC, and that's a lot more direct about why USC. Literally describe how to plan your academic pursuits and interests at USC. Feel free to address your first and second major choices. So I want to go through two examples, same student, how you can handle two slightly different types of Y school essays. So the first one through Hopkins, sometimes it feels like we live in an either or world more than an and world. You can be quiet or bold, academic or athletic. I always choose and. I was quiet at school and bold at home. I played sports and studied. This changed with my eating disorder, however, which turned my multi-dimensional life one-dimensional. It penetrated every aspect of my life, but only when it jeopardized school did I fight back. My education has always been about grades and enjoying learning, but in the past years I have discovered that learning is also a way to make an impact. This is why I joined the crisis hotline, to be with someone when they feel their world is falling apart. Serving others is not about volunteer hours, but making a difference, a value seen in Hopkins' numerous community programs, such as community impact internships that I hope to partake in. My mental health was also my introduction to research in neuroscience. By studying the neurophysiology of mental health disorders, we can find treatments for patients, but also make an invisible struggle visible. Perhaps one day I can study mood disorders at a molecular level in Dr. Sawa's lab, or the social behavior of psychiatric disorders with Dr. Carrigo, and truly join my goal of exploring neurobiology and psychiatry. Even as I have started to delve into neuroscience, my main aim has always been to help people. In my time as a patient, I never met someone in a lab coat. Instead, I was with nurses and doctors who gave me hope and cheered me on every discharge. That is who I want to be for patients. However, I also am aware that while I was fortunate to receive care, many aren't, and that can only be changed by looking at public health. In fact, my segue into research began by studying barriers to eating disorder treatment, a topic of personal importance. Therefore, my future goals are multidimensional with a focus in neuroscience, medicine, and public health. And at Hopkins, I won't be limited by either or. Instead, I can choose and. So, although say, oh, this is a Why Hopkins essay, talk about your life, we can really connect past experiences, trauma, goals, dreams together through all different aspects of understanding, what's below the surface of what the student has done, what's driving them, how they foresee their future, how Hopkins fits within that future. So in many ways, we're selling a dream more than why Hopkins. Hopkins should see themselves as a great stepping stone for the future. That's the goal, really, and how we were able to achieve it. But while also recognizing that Hopkins is very specifically chosen to get to that future goal. So whether it's through certain labs and programs and opportunities, we see that the student clearly has a strong vision for themselves and identified that Hopkins is the best place to make those dreams and goals happen. So let's move on to the USC essay, though, which is a bit shorter. Armed with curiosity and a mission for supporting the mental health of others, neuroscience is my natural choice of major, with USC being my dream school. In a world more focused on tangible than abstract concepts like mental health, I'm inspired by the research conducted at USC's Brain and Creativity Institute, focused on the intersection between behavior, cognition, and neurophysiology. I'm excited to participate in such research and take courses such as the psychophysiology of emotion, which combine pure neuroscience, emotional changes, and behavior factors crucial in mental health studies. I also hope to explore neural circuitry in psychiatric disorders under the guidance of professors such as Dr. Li Zhang. With such opportunities, I can further my study of the neural correlates of mental illnesses and make an invisible struggle visible. Still, my main goal has always been to help people. In my time as a patient, I never met someone in a lab coat, but doctors gave me endless support and encouragement. I hope to be that source of comfort for patients in the future. This is achievable with opportunities such as the Trojan Health Volunteers Program, where students can care for patients and are a stepping stone to my goal of becoming a physician. Beyond academics, I'm drawn to USC's spirited and positive environment with numerous clubs and campus traditions and LA's warm weather. At USC, the research, community service, and social possibilities are endless. It's where my curiosity can flourish and help me make an impact. So we had to get straight to the point. It's a 250-word essay. Highlight the programs. What are my goals? How can I get there? while also recognizing different aspects of the school. So in some ways, we looked at classes, we looked at research, we looked at volunteer work, and recognizing just some soft factors of the school. So recognizing the longer term goals, how does the school fit in? One, two, three. So these are less creative in nature, of course, but they're very purposeful and they require research and also the student to be able to convey how they see the school fits into their own future. So you can see it's not really viewing the school as the destination, but the school as a way to get to a bigger goal and destination. That is what will make the essays typically come alive more. Okay, back to the another type of essay. A favorite activity or academic interest. This is also super common. A lot of schools will say expand upon one activity. Why do you do it? One, two, three. So this is acknowledging that in the common application, the activities section, you have 10 spots to write down your activities. There's a 150 character limit. So you don't get to write very much about what you did. That's characters, not words. So in this way, when you get the opportunity to expand on an activity, you can either highlight your leadership, teamwork, passion, something that's not evident through the activities section. So we wouldn't really say, oh, let me tell you the award I won or how many hours I did. We already know that. But what are other aspects of the activity maybe we don't know? And then you can share that. So I'm going to share a successful example. This student, anyway, ended up going to Vanderbilt. Please briefly elaborate on one of your extracurricular activities or work experiences. We call ourselves the book club, though we are the varsity girls tennis team. We're named after the scrapbook passed down every year, each generation adding pictures, quotes, and inside jokes. This was the first competitive team I participated in. Beforehand, I entered tennis tournaments, but as an independent singles player. Joining a team taught me to be unselfish. In order to establish a ladder, we competed against each other, fueling resentment between players. However, once the ladder was established, everyone had to let go of past tensions and work together. Only when I became unselfish, abandoning my singles mindset, did I become a valuable team member. I saw in our improvement how hard work and cooperation led to incredible results. Our experience as a team transformed us. For that reason, we keep a lasting community and pass on a book from generation to generation. This student had really strong aspects of her resume, and we talked about her major pathway more in another essay, but we wouldn't have known this about her interest in the tennis team. She was not a top tennis player, but when she mentioned the tight-knit community, as she was able to get over some of her own kind of personal issues and really connect with other members of the team, we felt this was a side we would not know through the activities alone. We would have just known she plays on the team. She is not a very high ranked player. It just seems like a fun hobby. But in this way, we can really pull out some meaning to it. The fact that she's able to have this collaborative mindset, how she's able to contribute when she's not a top player and still enjoy it and still be try to bring a lot of value to her teammates. So we thought this was a worthwhile essay to share. Just a short essay of one of many that was required by Vanderbilt that year. So just a taste of how you can pull meaning out of something that doesn't seem like an achievement. A lot of these essays are opportunities to not expand upon how you made your greatest achievement, but how are you, once again, improving the environment around you? How are you solving problems? How are you communicating your values? So here we say, okay, we like this person, right? So let's move on to another type of essay. The quirky topic. Some schools ask topics that don't really fall under any category. They can be fun and creative, risk-taking, show your personality, show your voice. This idea being some of the topics are kind of bizarre and they want you to flex your creativity, give them something new, give them something exciting. U Chicago is quite famous for this, I suppose you could say. And that's what we're going to show you, a U Chicago example. So they had the topic Art is Either Plagiarism or Revolution by Paul Gauguin. What is your art? Is it plagiarism or revolution? So what does that mean? It's quite interpretive. But this student felt they had something good to say, so we worked through it. Tss, tss, boom, boom, boom. Dozens of explosions detonated one after the other. A chalky red fire flooded into the house, destroying everything in its path. The inferno quickly spread into my room, devouring large chestfuls of valuable diamonds and gold. I jolted out of my bed. Digging through one of my unscathed trunks, I managed to retrieve a steel bucket. I filled the bucket with water and vigorously splashed it onto my surroundings, neutralizing the flames and forging an exit path. Once I got out, I realized from the unnaturally illuminated pitch black sky that my house wasn't the only house on fire. The entire town was on fire. Boom! A block of TNT detonated right next to me. My health drastically dropped. Frantically reaching into my bag, I pulled out a red vial. I desperately chugged down the potion. My health bars slowly regained their form. Turning around, I assessed the damage done. The city was unrecognizable. Darn it, I wheezed with tears in my eyes. It was the fifth time this month that this had happened. Pressed the escape key on my keyboard on my computer and was greeted by Minecraft's logout screen. Closing my laptop, I lied on my bed thinking about how I had to recreate my archaeology project all over again. I was just a fan trying to pay homage to Tolkien. All I wanted to do was create an artistic replica of Middle Earth from the blocks in the game. As a child, I had excessively read and reread the Lord of the Rings series. Tolkien introduced me to a whole new world of imagination and wonder. Why couldn't the players destroying my buildings appreciate Middle Earth's magic as I had? The environment shouldn't be this hostile. Minecraft should be a medium where artists can freely express themselves just as players play the game. The game is practically a virtual manifestation of Legoland. Everything in Minecraft is made out of building blocks. These endless opportunities to create should be taken advantage of. I wasn't mad or anything, just disappointed. I collected resources to make tools, and I used these tools to collect resources. In short, I mined to craft and crafted to mine. Theoretically, the number of blocks that I could obtain from the game is infinite. Unfortunately, however, with 5 AP classes, 2 varsity sports, 10 internships, 7 instruments, and 3 incomplete personal statements on my plate, my time was limited. I had to go through extremely long lengths to plan out what I need, figuring out which blocks were essential to crafting Middle Earth, but I wasted my time again. The griefers, or the destructive players, on the other hand, only had to figure out one thing: when to strike. They found pleasure in causing destruction and pain. Fueled off of Doritos and Mountain Dew, the fedora-wearing griefers were the bane of my existence. I was tired of submitting to the tyranny of the griefers. I had to figure out how to beat them myself. It was time for a revolution. I hit the library and started borrowing books about economics. Minecraft, after all, was a game of scarcity and returns. The blocks were infinite, but the time to mine them all gave diminishing returns. I had to learn how to maximize efficiency and how to sustain my project despite the griefers' efforts to derail me. I began to compile Excel spreadsheets about the game. I listed how long it took to mine certain blocks, and I kept an inventory of the resources that I had acquired. I invested in precious ore blocks and dumped other inefficient resource blocks. I graphed charts to figure out the most efficient tools to use and when to use them. I stalked my griefers, recording the time periods on which they were online. I analyzed my data and looked for trends. I worked on creating Middle Earth while the griefers were offline, or while the server was off peaks of online traffic. My revolution was swinging into full action. Soon enough, I began to obtain my blocks faster than the griefers could destroy them. I didn't have to work any harder, I was working smarter. My optimized work ethic outpaced their disruptive frenzy. Even with Smog's help, the griefers couldn't stop me. My model of Middle Earth no longer consisted of post-TNT griefer craters and hobbit holes. The art model boasted of fortresses, chambers, castles, and temples. Through efficiency and hard work, I was able to complete my project without a griefer even attempting to blow my art anymore. I won the revolution, demonstrating to the Minecraft community how circumstances shouldn't just be accepted, they should be challenged. And with that, I challenged other new griefers to destroy my buildings again with a sign outside which read, "You shall not pass." So, once again, U Chicago gave this student the chance to write a pretty creative, pretty inventive essay, and he ran with it. In doing so, he delved into one of his favorite hobbies, Minecraft. A lot of our students play games, but I would argue he turned Minecraft into a pretty significant and serious, although funny, but serious activity. He's doing research, he's creating mathematical models, and you have this his heart trying to save Middle Earth, and he's just a Tolkien fan. So it's a lot of fun. He's able to bring a degree of seriousness into it, uh, into what is otherwise like a very fun activity. And we get to feel his personality, his compassion, his love of the art itself, his indirect love of people through this Minecraft universe. But we get to have a real personality and we have a strong voice and we get to feel connected to him. We could say, wow, I want to play Minecraft with him. I read this, I say, I don't play Minecraft, but suddenly I'm interested to try. So in that way, it was very attractive, to admissions officers. It can be successful. We're going to move to our review. We've seen a bunch of different types of essays, but what would we say are the general rules that any student, any applicant should be considering. So this idea being you are submitting a full application. So you want to be comprehensive, but also cohesive. You have to have a strategy. What qualities do you want to show about yourself? What values are you trying to communicate? How and where do you do this? Consider how each essay works with the others. So we want to show your humanity. We want you to be impact driven. What were the result? Who are you actually helping? How do people actually respond to what you're doing? Highlight yourself, but do not brag. Always be goal oriented. If you're goal oriented, then you're never bragging. You're just trying to get to a certain result. How you express something always beats what you did. The what is very simple. The what, in terms of I made some project, they start to blend together. How you express what you did is what matters. And show you're nice. What drives you to do something? Reveal, be vulnerable. Show what you're truly trying to do, how you care to help people, etc. So another way to view it after you read an application, do I want to have lunch with you? Do I want to get to know you better? Do I like you? Do I want to accept you to join my campus? In the end, it's people choosing people. We could say that just like in a job, you submit a resume, maybe the resume is decent, then you go for the interview. And the interviewer says, well, do you fit our culture? Do we think you'll get along here? Do we think you're, a team player? Same idea with college admissions. They know roughly your stats, they know your activities. When they hit the essays, they're like, do I like you? Do I think you'll be a good fit here? Do I think when your version of success meshes with ours? So, of course, feel free to reach out for further chat. We're here in Blackhawk Plaza, Danville. You can find us online. You can find us on Yelp. You can find our Google reviews. You can scan for consultation. But yeah, does anyone have any questions? Feel free to raise them in the Q&A or in the chat, and I'd be happy to answer anything now, or of course, happy to chat offline or at another time. I do see a hand raised. I hate to say it. Would you be able to type in your question? Or I think I can allow you to speak. I'm going to allow you to. Yes. Ivy, would you like to say something? I had a hand raised, so. Anybody else? Yeah, Ivy, if you do want to speak, I believe you could unmute and speak if you wanted to, but maybe that was an error. Okay. Well, once again, feel free, reach out via consultation link. Feel free to call us, text us, and we'd be very happy to go over any further questions, talk about your child's case in more depth at another time. Okay, well, thank you, everybody, and appreciate you taking time out of your evening. Have a great weekend, and thank you.